Welcome everybody. You've successfully joined the Wellbeing Workshop on Self-Compassion. My name is Rebecca Sheridan and I'm a cognitive behaviour therapist at Wellbeing Suffolk, and this recording is available to everybody who lives in Norfolk and Suffolk. Just a note before we start about safety. If you're feeling at risk, we understand that that is distressing, but it isn't unusual to have thoughts that life's not worth living or thoughts about harming yourself. However, if you feel that you might act on those thoughts, it's really important that you seek some support, and here are some options. If you have any current intent or plans to harm yourself, or if you have any current intent or plans to end your life, please contact the following. NHS 111 has an option that's a helpline for people of all ages in Norfolk and Suffolk who need urgent mental health support, and the helpline is available all day, every day. You can call the Samaritans on 116 123, or you can email them at joe@samaritans.org. Please seek support from your GP at the earliest possible opportunity, and if you're concerned about a child or a young person, you can call Childline on 0800 1111. The aim of this presentation is to give you an understanding of what compassion, especially self-compassion, is, and to offer you some practical strategies to help you incorporate it into your life. It's not aimed at being a full therapeutic intervention because this would last many weeks, but it will provide you with some knowledge and some tools that can be used independently, or it may complement any treatment that you're already engaging in. The plan is to cover the following. We're going to look at what is compassion, and we're going to look at how we can build self-compassion. Essentially, the first half is about understanding compassion, and the second half is about building our self-compassion with some practical exercises. I just want to explain, first of all, that learning about compassion does come from an evolutionary psychology perspective. It doesn't come from any particular faith or belief system, nor is it meant to persuade towards or challenge any faith. If evolution is not something that sits well with you, then the second half with practices and techniques can still be extremely useful to you. This webinar has been written in reference to the evidence-based treatment of compassion-focused therapy that has been developed by Paul Gilbert. So let's start with what is compassion. Compassion has been described in various ways, but this description from the Dalai Lama is widely used and recognised. He describes compassion as a sensitivity to suffering in the self and others, with a commitment to try and alleviate and prevent it. When we think of being compassionate, we might easily use words such as kind, warm, encouraging, wise, and caring, for example. However, words such as brave, determined, strong, and courageous also apply, and this might come as a surprise. This is because compassion is about having the ability to face suffering, discomfort, and challenges rather than avoid them, which is brave, with warmth, wisdom, and kindness, and to do something to work with them in a helpful way, showing strength, determination, and courage. Compassion can be described in three directions. So we might have outwards. This is from us to others, and generally this is easier for us. And then we have from others to ourselves, which can be a little bit more difficult and challenging. And then we have from ourselves towards ourselves, and this can be something that we really struggle with and is the focus of today's presentation. So developing compassion involves learning about human nature, learning skills to feel safe, and then putting those skills into practice to live a life which is full of compassion, outwards and inwards. It's about creating a new way of being, a new lifestyle, and a new approach to being human. And being human is key when it comes to understanding and developing compassion. To explain, so being human in the world will inevitably lead to some form of suffering. This isn't something we can avoid, and it's unfortunately a fact of life. And there's a story about called The Two Arrows, which explains things quite nicely in relation to suffering. So when we experience challenges and struggles, it can feel like being hit with an arrow. It's painful and it hurts. This is what we call in the story the first arrow. Then we as humans have a tendency to aim another arrow at ourselves with our critical thoughts and our judgments about the suffering. This is the second arrow. And it might not end here. We can just go on firing more and more and more arrows at ourselves, feeling more and more pain. However, if we experience the first arrow, but then responded compassionately towards ourselves rather than critically, we would have just had the one arrow and we would have soothed its impact. So let's look at an example of this. Imagine I go for a job interview for a role that I really want and I have my heart set on getting. I come second and I miss out on the job. This is the first arrow. It hurts and I feel disappointed and sad and frustrated. I then aim more arrows at myself with judgments and criticisms such as, "You're such a loser. It's not surprising you didn't get it. Who would want you anyway? I'll never get my dream job. My life's a mess." And on it goes, just beating myself down. Or another option is I go for the job interview for a role that I really want and I have my heart set on getting. I come second and I miss out on the job. This is the first arrow. But this time I recognise and acknowledge that I feel sad and disappointed. I treat myself with kindness and I say, "You worked really hard for this. Your efforts are going to pay off soon. You came second, which means you're doing a lot of things right. The right job will happen. Just keep trying. In the meantime, just keep working hard and developing your skills." It might be nice to go get a hug from somebody that you care about, or maybe have an evening out with your friends. It's the same scenario, but one is full of criticism and judgment, and one is full of kindness and compassion. Which do you think is going to be more helpful and has the better long-term consequences? It may not be surprising to you that we humans are born with tricky brains. This is why our default position is to jump to criticism. We have a brain that's programmed to notice threat and danger above all else. Sometimes we might call it the better safe than sorry brain. This brain that we have is great, it's amazing if we're consistently in a dangerous environment with threat around every corner, much like life was millions of years ago or in a war. However, in today's relatively danger-free world, this better safe than sorry brain can cause us all sorts of problems, and let me explain why. Our brain has evolved over millions of years, and to simplify things, we can divide it into our old brain and our new brain. Our old brain has a very old part and a quite old part. Remember, when we're talking about new and old, we are talking about it in millions, in relation to millions of years. And we can think of it a little bit like layers. We started with the very old part of the brain, and as we evolved, we grew the quite old part of the brain, and again, as we evolved, we grew the newest part of the brain. Each of these layers has a really important function, and we don't want to be without any of them. And remember, however, as we're describing this, I'm certainly not a neuroscientist. There may be some neuroscientists out there, but we're simplifying these explanations just for the benefit of all of us and to make it clear. So let's start with the very old part first. This is all about survival. Its primary purpose is to spot danger or any type of threat and to keep us alive. At the time that it was developed, we were in regular danger of being eaten or attacked. We weren't at the top of the food chain, and so we had a brain that was hyper-focused on spotting any change in the environment, subtle sounds, or an obvious saber-toothed tiger running towards us, and it kept us from extinction. Without this part of the brain, we wouldn't be here today. Remember, however, that threat and danger didn't just come in the form of predators, like the saber-toothed tiger. Threat came from being isolated and excluded and rejected by our group. If we were alone in this environment, we didn't stand much of a chance. So it makes sense then to be alert to any signs of rejection and disapproval. And this might be a common fear of kind of like for most of us today, that threat of being excluded or rejected. Next, we develop the quiehold part of the brain. So this is essential for caring and looking after our offspring, and it enabled us to have a greater range of emotions. Mammals are born into the world needing to be nurtured to survive, and so this quality is really essential. It allowed us to have the best possible chance of passing on our genes and ultimately the survival of our species. And then finally, the new brain evolved. This is the part of the brain that makes it different to other animals. It's all about thinking. It's got wonderful qualities like allowing us to problem solve, analyse, or be creative. And we have many of the developments and inventions in the world today because we evolved to have the thinking part of the brain. But there's a problem with this. The old part and the new part don't always work well together or complement each other. They can form unhelpful loops in thinking, feeling, and threat that keep us in an almost constant state of danger. For example, let's compare how we humans with our thinking brain deal with threat compared to animals without a thinking brain, such as a zebra. If a zebra was happily munching on the grass and suddenly heard rustling in the bushes and spotted the golden colour of a lion, it would run fast. Its survival mechanism would kick in automatically and spontaneously, and its only focus would be on running and getting out of the way of the lion to live another day. Let's imagine on this occasion, the zebra did escape and it wasn't dinner. The threat's gone, the lion's moved on, the zebra's going to carry on munching on a new spot of grass. The zebra's threat system would have quietened as soon as it was out of danger, and they'd be focused on filling their stomachs again until the next lion appeared, of course. Without that thinking brain, the times between lions appearing would be calm. Now let's look at this from the human perspective with the addition of our thinking brain. We're at the zoo and we hear that a lion has escaped. Our survival system will kick into gear immediately and automatically without having to be asked, and we will run for safety. We quickly hear that the lion has been caught, returned to its enclosure, and the zoo's perfectly safe again. Do you think that we, with our thinking brains, are just going to settle down to our picnic and feel calm and peaceful? Not a chance. We're going to be thinking, have they locked the enclosure? If it escaped once, it can happen again. What if I'd been somewhere else in the zoo and the lion had found me? I can never go to that zoo again. I can never let anyone I know go to that zoo again. I could have been dinner. How terrifying. And on and on and on. So what does this thinking do to our threat system in our old brain? It feeds it. The thoughts fuel the fire of threat. The more we think these threat-related thoughts, the more our old brain believes there is danger and adds more fuel, logs in this example here, to the fire. The more we think about danger, the more our bodies respond as if there is danger, and we get stuck in a negative feedback loop. The body says there's danger, therefore the brain thinks there's danger, therefore the body says there's danger, and so on, back and forth, and we're stuck. It's a bit like a fizzy drink bottle. If you unscrew the lid, it's going to fizz, but it will settle down all on its own if it's just left. However, if you put the lid on and shake it, it's going to fizz again. The action of shaking the bottle makes it fizz. Leaving it alone allows it to settle. Thinking about danger makes our bodies believe there is danger, even when there isn't any. This is because the imagination is an amazing, brilliant thing. We just need to learn how to use this superpower of our imagination. And we're going to show you how in the second half. You may be wondering why I'm telling you this. It's because there's a really important message to share. None of this is our fault. It's not our fault we have tricky brains. It's not our fault we're programmed to notice threat and danger above all else. This is a result of our wonderful brains that kept us safe and enabled our species to survive. It's a result of our wonderful brains that enabled us to create many brilliant inventions. And it's a result of our wonderful brains who sometimes struggle to work in harmony together and communicate effectively. The good news is that by understanding how our brains work and the difficulties and negative feedback loops they can get stuck in, we can take responsibility for learning how to drive our brains, as it were. We can make them work in our favour rather than them making life difficult for us. And instead of saying, what's wrong with me, we can say, my brain is just trying to keep me safe. I just need to help it understand that it can have a break when it's not needed. As well as all of this not being our fault, there's something else to understand that's not our fault either. And that is A, the environment that we grew up in, and B, the world that we live in. We didn't choose what year we were born in, what country we were born in, what family we were born into. We didn't choose any of our early life. We landed in it and we made the best of what we had. We are just one of many versions, many possible versions of ourselves that we could have been. If we'd have been born into a different family, a different country, a different period of time, we would be a different version of ourselves. And this is not to blame others or to prevent taking responsibility. All of this is said to help understand so that we can demonstrate compassion towards ourselves and others, and to take responsibility for learning how to move forwards and live the kind of life that we want to, and to do what we choose is in our best interests. So this is a lot of information. Let's just do a quick check-in. So far we've learned that compassion is both kind and caring, as well as strong and courageous. Compassion has three directions: us to others, others to us, and us to us. We have tricky brains due to the way we as humans evolved, and as a result, we're pre-programmed to notice threat before anything else, and this can get us stuck in challenging feedback loops. We didn't choose when, where, or to whom we were born. Therefore, it's not our fault that we struggle sometimes. There is nothing wrong with us. Our task is to learn how to use this understanding to steer our brains. Our job is to make our brains work for us by developing compassion for ourselves and others. And then we can allow our brain to keep us safe when it really needs to, and relax the rest of the time. We have many emotions, and it's possible that we wish that we could be without them sometimes, especially when we're experiencing really challenging ones. However, all emotions are useful. And when we think about a life without emotions, an inability to experience love or excitement or be moved by something, the payoff may not be worth it. The problem isn't with emotions in themselves, but in our relationship with emotions. Many emotions we have can be grounded into 3 systems. Doing this helps us to understand ourselves and our experiences, thereby enabling us and empowering us even further. The 3 systems are threat, drive, and soothe. Each of these systems encompasses a number of relevant, valid, and useful emotions. Let's start with the threat system first. The threat system is all about feelings of anxiety, fear, and anger. It'll be of no surprise to you that this is all about survival. Our threat system's job is to notice threat and prevent it. This can be a real threat, such as a truck hurtling towards us, a social threat, such as everyone but you getting the invite to an event, or an imagined threat in the form of thoughts, pictures, or mini movies. Our threat system has no way of knowing whether the threat is in real life or in our minds and imagination. It responds the same. Remember, it's a better safe than sorry brain. The threat system is great. There's absolutely no way that we want to be without it. It can, however, get overzealous and cause us problems when there isn't any need. The drive system is all about feelings such as excitement, achievement, and motivation. It helps us reach our goals and provides us with rewards for doing so. Not surprisingly, most of the motivation is around survival. Food, shelter, security, reproduction, belonging, achievement, etc. Without the drive system, nothing would happen and we'd be extinct. So understandably so, we don't want to be without it. However, just like the threat system, it can be too demanding and cause us problems. We might be so driven by our goals that we don't rest and we get ill. It can also be triggered by our threat system telling us that we don't belong or aren't good enough if we don't achieve, resulting in threat, and the drive system just feeding each other. And as you can imagine, this doesn't end well. And then finally, we have the soothe system. Soothe is all about caring and affection, kindness and safety. It's about nurturing. Threat and drive can be very demanding and take up a lot of our emotions. They're quite greedy. So without the soothe system to help us rest, take breaks, recharge, feel connected and accepted, threat and drive can run the show and either burnout happens or we become depressed and then shut down. So we're mammals. We're born needing to be cared for. And although our aim is to grow into independence, that doesn't mean that we develop into robots. We still need nurturing and care all through our lives. And the soothe system can provide this for ourselves and for others. So we have the 3 systems, all essential in their own right, but not always balanced. Remember, drive and threat can seek all of the limelight. What we're working towards with compassion is to have the 3 systems in balance, all 3 systems working in harmony together, all 3 systems communicating with each other. When we do this, firstly, we're becoming aware of what triggers our threat and our drive systems in an unhelpful way, as well as what we know already activates our soothe system. And secondly, strengthening the soothe system so that it's more accessible and we're able to have the positive influence that it was designed to have. And we can start doing this by reflecting on the size of our systems, what triggers them, and how we respond to them when they are triggered. This can be done either by drawing them out on paper, using Play-Doh to represent the systems, or you might have another creative way to reflect on this. You might also want to ask yourself these questions to help you decide on the size of each of the systems, both generally and in specific situations. We want to know what's happening in and to each system, which one's in charge, and how they're impacting each other. So for each system, we're reflecting on how often this system is triggered, what tends to trigger it, how long it stays activated for once it's triggered, how powerfully we experience this system once it's triggered, and we might measure that from 0 to 10, what type of thoughts that we have when in this system, and what do we want to do when this system is triggered. And that's just taking some time, either on our own or with somebody to support us doing this, just to reflect on those. Let's look at an example. So when Peter had a stressful day at work, after he'd struggled to meet a deadline and had to ask for an extension, his 3 systems looked like this. His threat system was the largest because he believed he'd failed. His boss was disappointed in him and his colleagues would be looking down on him. His drive system was second largest because he was going to have to work longer hours to get the project done. And his soothe system was tiny because he blamed himself for being useless and thought he didn't deserve any kindness. He just needed to be a better human being. Or another example, Sue was struggling to keep on top of all the housework with her health condition, which affected her mobility and her energy levels. She was also in a lot of pain most of the time. Her threat system was largest because she told herself that she should be able to do the housework just like she used to before her health condition. She constantly criticised herself and compared herself to how she used to be. Her drive system was small because the way she spoke to herself made her health condition worse, which meant that she had even less energy to do anything, and her motivation reduced, and she'd forgotten what it was like to achieve anything. And her soothe system was also small. She had a partner who was kind and understanding, so she received care and nurturing from them. However, Sue didn't think she deserved this, and she couldn't do much around the house to help, and so she struggled to benefit from their love and understanding. And a final example, Chris was feeling nervous going to a party after the ending of a relationship. Their threat system was triggered because they had doubts as to whether they'd really enjoy themselves, would have anyone to talk to, or whether it would be a complete disaster. However, their drive system believed it was worth a try. They knew 2 people who were going to go, and building a new life was really important to them, and they'd bought some new clothes that they wanted to wear as well. And their soothe system was understanding of what a difficult situation this was and acknowledged how brave they were being. Their soothe system reassured them that if it didn't go to plan, they'd at least tried, and there'd be many more opportunities to meet people again. Essentially, our aim while cultivating compassion is 1, to look towards our own and others' suffering rather than avoiding it, and 2, to develop skills and approaches to help work with and lighten that suffering. Now that we've got an understanding of what compassion is, let's start to build some of those skills needed to develop the soothe system and become more compassionate. When we think about developing compassion, the creator of compassion-focused therapy, Paul Gilbert, divides it into the qualities of compassion: sensitivity, sympathy, distress tolerance, empathy, non-judgment, care for well-being, and the skills of compassion. So these would be attention, feelings, sensory, behaviour, reasoning, and imagery. We're going to be layering up our skills in this next part to give you a taste of some of those activities. There are lots more, and you can investigate these further if you find the following exercises helpful. However, please remember that all skills take time to learn. Today is about an introduction and starting you off on the journey. We say layering up like this cake because there's some foundation skills which form like a strong base from which to add the other skills and exercises, and we'll be building on these layer by layer. The layers of these skills are soothing rhythm breathing, mindful attention, the power of the body, posture, facial expressions, tone of voice, imagery, calm place and nurturer, compassionate thinking and reasoning, compassionate behaviour, and compassionate letter writing. Let's start with our most fundamental, widely used, most adaptable, and most accessible skill, breathing. Soothing rhythm breathing, to be exact. You might think that it's odd that we're suggesting teaching the skill of breathing. I can do that. I do it all the time or I'll be dead, you might be thinking. However, although we're all breathing well enough to keep us alive, we're not all breathing well enough to tap into this free, natural and easy tool that will calm and soothe us with immediate effect, and if used regularly, contribute to an overall long-term improvement in our well-being. Breathing is so important, it can influence our autonomic nervous system. So our autonomic nervous system manages everything that happens in our body automatically, like digestion and breathing, and it's split into two paths, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system jumps into action when there's danger and makes all sorts of changes to our body and mind to keep us safe. So this is our fight and flight threat system. Our parasympathetic nervous system helps bring us back to balance and soothe and calm us, sometimes called the rest and digest system. We also know it here as the soothe system. They're both really important, but as we've learned earlier, the danger system can get greedy and sensitive and demand too much. And so we want to learn how to balance this and activate it to bring online the parasympathetic nervous system in manual ways. And breathing right, does this. So how do we do it? In a moment, I'm going to read a script to allow you to experience soothing rhythm breathing. But first, there are a few tips just to help. So we're going to be finding a comfortable posture, ideally in a space which is quiet and without distractions. You might want to close your eyes or just focus on the ground or at some point or object. And we're going to want to breathe in through our nose, and then we can breathe out through our nose or our mouth, whichever is most comfortable for you. And as we do this, I promise you, your mind will wander. This is absolutely normal, okay? When your mind does wander, just notice that and return to focusing on the breathing or the object that you're focusing on. It's going to happen a lot. It's going to happen lots and lots of times throughout this practice. Very, very normal. Just notice and return, notice and return. And as we breathe in, we want our diaphragm, our belly, to expand rather than our chest. Let me explain what this means. Imagine that you had a balloon in your belly. When you breathe in, it expands. When you breathe out, it deflates. Okay. So let's have a go at this. Okay. So we've put up a calming picture of some trees to focus on, if that's helpful. If it's not helpful, just ignore it and focus on something else. Okay. We're not trying to force anything to happen here with the breathing. We're just helping to slow the breathing down. Okay. To be comfortable whilst you're doing this. So make sure that you're sitting comfortably, and if possible, your feet are on the ground and your hands are on your lap, palms facing up. Either close your eyes or look down or fix your eyes on an object or the picture on the screen. I'm going to focus on your breathing and allow it to become slow and rhythmic. We're going to find the slow, rhythmic pattern of breathing that's comfortable for you. You're going to breathe in through your nose. Notice your belly rising like a balloon being filled. Breathe out slowly as your belly deflates like a balloon. Breathe in. Notice your belly rising. Breathe out and notice your belly deflating. Do this for a while till you find a rhythm that suits you and feels comfortable, calming and soothing. If it helps you to focus on your belly, inflating and deflating, go with that. If it helps you to focus on the feeling of the breath coming in and out of your nose, go with that. If it helps you to focus on an object or an idea, like waves coming in and out of the shore, then go with that. Find whatever works for you. And whenever your mind wanders to other things, just notice and return to your focus. Do this as many times as it happens. It's normal and it's okay. So I'm going to be silent for a short while, just to allow you to have a go at doing this quietly. So just as you bring this exercise to a close, open your eyes, look around the space that you're in, maybe take a stretch in any way that feels good to you. And remember, because this is a pre-recorded presentation, you could just press pause and do it for a bit longer if you wanted to as well. So you've just completed your first self-compassion exercise, soothing rhythm breathing. Now we're ready for the next layer, which is mindful attention. So Jon Kabat-Zinn describes mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. We can spend so much of our lives on autopilot, not really being aware of the present moment. We might be thinking about the past and what we could have done differently, and questioning why something happened, and if we've done something different, would it have made a difference? Or we might be thinking about the future, worrying about what will happen, what might happen, what could happen. Where we're not is in the present, in the now. And we might be doing something in the now, like washing the dishes or walking, but our minds are elsewhere in the past or the future. Our minds are not in the now, they're not experiencing the experience of walking. And what we know is that when we think about the past or the future in an unhelpful way that we can't action or influence, our threat and or our drive systems get triggered in an unhelpful way. And when we're in the present, in the now, our soothe system can be activated, helping us to feel calm and safe and anchored. But just a quick point to make, it can definitely be helpful to think about the past sometimes, to reflect, to remember, to learn. And it can definitely be helpful to think about the future too, to plan and prepare and to dream. What we're talking about here is unhelpful thinking without resolution that we have no control over and that causes us distress. We might like to think of two types of mindfulness, formal and informal. Formal mindfulness is about doing a specific exercise. So it might include mindful breathing, much like we've already practiced. Remember, notice and return, or a body scan, or any number of different specific meditations. Informal mindfulness refers to being mindful whilst doing an existing activity such as washing up or having a shower or eating and drinking. It involves being present in the full sensory experience, the feel of warm soapy water on our hands, the smell of sweet strawberry, the sound of a shower on our bodies, the taste of coffee, the colour of the bubbles in the bowl. For our practice with this, we're going to experiment with moving the spotlight of our attention. Okay, this is going to show us that we can decide and influence where and on what to place our attention. We're going to be simply move that spotlight of our attention and awareness onto different things. Okay, so not being autopilot in the past or autopilot in the future, we're going to train that attention to go where we choose to put it. So to begin, make sure that you're sitting comfortably and, if possible, your feet are on the ground and your hands are in your lap, palms facing up. You can close your eyes if you wish, but you don't have to. And I'm going to ask you to bring the spotlight of your attention to your right big toe. And then bring the spotlight of your attention to an image of a black cat. And then bring your spotlight of attention to your left ear. An oak tree. Your right knee. Your left eyebrow. Your belly rising and falling as you breathe. What you had for your last meal. Democracy. Faith. A dolphin. The taste in your mouth. Someone you love. Whatever you can hear at the moment. What I imagine you noticed by doing this was that you were able to move and direct your attention to some extent. We're also able to some degree to direct it in different directions, such as a physical sensation, an idea or a concept, a sound, a memory. It might not have been easy, and you might have been interrupted by thoughts like, what's the point of this? This is weird. This is interesting, my big toe is itching. But remember, this is normal, and when it happens, we just notice and return, notice and return. We can control and direct where we place our attention with training. With this in mind, we have the knowledge that we can learn to direct our attention. We might need to build up the attention muscle to make it stronger, just like going to the gym and getting fitter and stronger. But it is possible, and you can do this by practicing that exercise regularly, being present when you're doing an activity, practicing soothing rhythm breathing regularly, as well as many other exercises that are available if you decide that you'd like to learn more about mindfulness and compassion focused therapy. So now on to the power of the body in the self-compassion. This is linked to the way that we use our bodies in terms of posture, facial expressions, and tone of voice that we have when we're speaking to other people or ourselves. And when our body posture is closed and hunched over, we're sending the message to our brains that there's a threat. We're protecting ourselves and our vital organs in case of attack. Our brains hear this message, and our sympathetic nervous system, our threat system, is fired up, ready to protect us. When in fact, we might just be sitting on our computer working or scrolling on social media and be hunched over. Instead, when we have an open body posture, we're communicating to our brains that all is well and we're safe. There's no need to activate the fight and flight threat system. This is just a simple act that can communicate so much and coordinate safety with our bodies and our minds. So let's give this a try. If you can, and it doesn't harm you or hurt you, scrunch your body up tight and lean forward. Okay, I'm going to stay here just for about 10 seconds or so. How does it feel? Uncomfortable, stressful, awkward, not nice. Now, feet on the floor, hands relaxed by your side or on your lap, back comfortably straight, not forced, but comfortably straight, and shoulders dropped. And we'll just stay in this position for 10 or so seconds. How does this feel? Much more calm and relaxed, much nicer than being hunched over. You can also stand or sit if you're unable to stand, and imagine that you're an old tree with deep roots, that you're grounded. And although your branches may move and you might be caught up in the wind, the weather, whether it's a breeze or a storm, your roots hold strong and you're grounded. We're jumping ahead a little bit here with imagery, which is up next. But the posture, the imagery, the posture of tall, straight, comfortable, open, activates our soothe system rather than our threat system when we're hunched over. The same principle of the brain responding to the body holds true for facial expressions too. So what's it like if we greet somebody and they have a scowl or a frown on their face and they're glaring at us? we can feel in danger and our threat system is activated. And what's it like if we greet someone and they're smiling and they're looking at us gently? We feel welcome and our soothe system is activated. The same rules apply to our own facial expressions, influencing our own threat and soothe systems too. So when we're scowling and frowning, we're giving our brain the messages of danger. When we're relaxed and smiling, we're giving our own brains the messages of safety. We're not suggesting that we walk around with a permanent grin, smile on our face, but knowing this and deliberately changing our facial expression to help activate our soothe system is a neat little trick to know, I think. Finally, let's think about our tone of voice. We know the difference in how it feels when someone speaks to us in an angry tone or a warm, friendly tone. However, we often fail to recognise that when we use a critical, judgmental, cross tone of voice with ourselves, it has exactly the same effect. We aren't immune to our own tone of voice. It doesn't only work on other people, it still hurts us. Our old brain, with its essential but simple response system, doesn't know the difference between other people speaking to us or ourselves speaking to us. All it recognises is threat. So this is a well-known pie chart here that just shows how much of our communication is made up of how we say something. So that's 38%. And a whopping 55% is down to body language and facial expression. But of course, we already know how to tackle this. So the message regarding tone of voice here is: speak to ourselves in the same tone of voice that we would use for someone we loved and respected. Now to imagery. So as we noted in the first half, our old brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. This can work against us and activate our threat system when there's no real danger, causing us all sorts of problems. However, knowing this means that we can also work this in our favour. We have a light bulb moment. If it doesn't know the difference, we can imagine all sorts of helpful things to activate our soothe system instead of our threat. We don't have to be on a real golden beach with turquoise sea and blue sky. We can imagine it. Although obviously, of course, I think most of us may kind of be quite delighted to have the real version too. An experiment was done once to explore the impact of the imagination on the brain. Researchers asked people to imagine increasingly bright lights. They weren't put in a room with bright lights, they weren't taken outside into the sunshine, they were in a normally lit room and just asked to imagine increasingly bright lights. The participants also knew that they were using their imagination rather than being exposed to bright lights. What they found was that people's pupils changed in size in response to the level of brightness that they were imagining. They couldn't consciously control the size of their pupils. This is something that happens automatically in response to the amount of light received by the eye. But their brains took the imagined bright lights to be the same as if real. Quite something, I think, and hopefully proves our point about the power of imagination. Before we try out a specific compassion-based imagery exercise, there are just a few important things to note. It's quite normal to think that when we're talking of imagery, we're imagining something like HD, like a cinema or TV. This isn't so. Imagery doesn't have to be vivid. It can be a felt sense, and it can be linked more closely with touch, taste or sound, and it can be blurry, might be really faint, might not quite get a grasp of it. So let's give this a bit of a try. Get yourself seated comfortably in a relaxed and open posture as normal, and close your eyes. I will guide you through some questions to help you imagine some things. So first of all, What does a cow look like? What do you imagine a cow looks like? Or a rainbow? What does Twinkle Twinkle Little Star sound like? What do waves sound like? What does a lemon taste like? And finally, imagine a blue cat with green eyes that smells of ice cream and feels like velvet. Hopefully, you recognise that something came up for you. It might not have been clear, it might have been more of a sensory experience, but we usually get a sense of something, even if it's very vague. Let's put this into practice now using a specific exercise called Favourite Place. So the aim of this is for you to create in your imagination a space where you feel calm, accepted, and where you can retreat to, and it's all yours. It shouldn't have any links to any distressing places, experiences, or people. And it can be a real place, a place you want to go, or a totally fictional place. There's no rules there, okay? You're the creator of whatever this place is, and it's yours to make as you want, as long as it's nurturing and pleasant for you. So we've added a picture of a possible place here. You can use it to inspire you if that's helpful, or you can ignore it if that's helpful. I'm going to read some instructions, pausing between each one just to give you a bit of time to imagine. And remember, it's going to be normal for your mind to wander. Just notice and return, notice and return. Okay. So make sure that you're sitting comfortably, and if possible, your feet are on the ground and your hands are in your lap, palms facing up. And for a few moments, practice your soothing rhythm breathing. Just find your own slow rhythm. And then imagine a place where you can feel calm and peaceful. What do you notice as you look around? What colours can you see or sense? What sounds can you hear? They may be loud or soft or in the distance. Can you smell or taste anything? If so, what's this like for you? What physical sensations come up for you? Can you reach out and touch anything? Are you hot, cold, just right? And what emotions are you feeling? Tune into all these sensory experiences and absorb them into your imagination. If you choose, you might want to give this place a name or a phrase to help you locate it in your imagination easily. You can choose to stay there a while, just enjoying the experience, or you can leave whenever you want to, just by opening your eyes, being aware of where you are in the present. I'll be silent for a little while longer, just to allow you some time before we move on to the next slide. Now on to compassionate thinking and reasoning. Our thoughts impact the way that we feel. We now know we're primed to notice threat thanks to our old brain, and this means that we have a tendency to interpret situations from a negative perspective in case we need to be alert to any danger. So unfortunately, we're more likely to have a leaning towards negative interpretations as part of our survival system. We know that our old brain is just trying to keep us safe and alive, but we also now know that it doesn't always respond appropriately, and it can be prone to false alarms and believing fake news. And we know that our brains respond to our imagination as well as real life. So in real life, if someone was to speak to us in a nasty way, for instance, telling us we were a loser for not fitting into our jeans anymore, with a nasty tone of voice too, we would feel hurt, useless, dejected, shame, just to name a few emotions, and this would make sense to us. However, our brains respond in exactly the same way when we say these words to ourselves in our heads as another person speaking them to us out loud. If we lived with someone, and unfortunately some of us may have or have had this experience, who was constantly belittling and bullying us, we would expect to be downtrodden and miserable. We would expect our threat system to be on high alert. When we speak to ourselves in this way, we're having exactly the same impact. So it will come as no surprise to you that we need to invite our soothe system to the party. By speaking to ourselves in a compassionate way with compassionate words, we activate our soothe system rather than our threat system. There's a well-known story about the two wolves. It goes like this. One day, a grandson asks his grandfather about how to manage life, and the grandfather explains that everyone has a fight within them between helpful and unhelpful thoughts and ways of being in the world, and he likens it to two wolves, one helpful, one unhelpful. The grandson asks, which wolf wins the fight? The grandfather answers, the one that you feed. There are various messages we can take from this story, but our message for today is that we want to give our attention to activating the soothe system. We want to feed the soothe system, although not literally with sweets, as this picture indicates, and allow the threat system to work only when it really needs to. Our quite old brain was built for caring and looking after others, so we just need to allow it to do what it does best, to nurture. And we can do this in the following ways. So, validate and acknowledging our suffering. We call that name it to tame it. Speak to ourselves as if we would speak to somebody we loved and respected. This includes words and tone of voice. And when we do make a mistake, use compassionate self-correction rather than self-criticism. So let's explain each one of these. Name it to tame it. For this, we simply want to say what we're feeling out loud, on paper, on your phone, in poetry, in drawing, in music, It doesn't matter. Our feelings want and deserve to be heard, acknowledged and validated. So speaking to ourselves as we would someone we loved and respected, including words and tone of voice. We can ask ourselves the following questions to help us do this. Questions like, how does it make sense that I would feel this way? How would I understand this situation if it was someone I loved and respected who was experiencing it? What might help me feel safe so I can work through this? What would I say if it wasn't me who was experiencing this? What support might be helpful right now? We can use a structured approach to help with this too, using what we call a compassionate thought record. And it's got these questions that we've just spoken about. So let's look through an example of what that might look like if we completed it. So what was the situation that triggered me to feel bad? What happened? Well, I was sitting on my own at the lunch table and no one came to sit with me, so I ate lunch alone. What did I say to myself and about myself because of this situation? I said to myself, you're boring and no one wants to spend time with you. You're just not important to other people. You'll never be accepted or part of a group. And I said it in a mean, accusatory tone of voice. How did I feel in this situation and in response to the things I said to myself? I felt lonely and hurt and sad and miserable. And my shoulders were hunched and my jaw was clenched. And I had a sinking feeling in my stomach and a tightness in my throat. How does it make sense that I would feel this way? Well, I wanted to have lunch with someone and have a good chat about the weekend. So when no one came over to join me, it makes sense that I'd feel disappointed and alone. My hopes and wishes weren't met. I also know that my old brain interprets not belonging to a group as a threat. So it makes sense that I felt this way. My old brain was just trying to protect me. How would I understand this situation if it was someone I loved and respected experiencing it? Well, I'd be able to see that they just wanted some company and to feel part of something, and I'd feel warmth and compassion that their hopes hadn't been met and they felt lonely. I'd want to help them see that it may not have been because no one wanted to spend time with them, but that they may have been busy or feeling bad themselves or just needed to speak to someone about something else. I'd want to do something nice for them to help them feel better and let them know that I valued them and thought that they were important and good company. And what might help me feel safe so I can work through this? Well, I could do my soothing rhythm breathing. I could go for my favourite place in my imagination. I could speak to one of my friends and tell them how I feel. I could ask one of my friends if they want to do something together sometime over the next week. I could get something nice for dinner and watch a feel-good movie afterwards. And what might I say if it wasn't me who was experiencing this? I say, maybe the other people were busy and needed to keep working. Maybe they were taking their lunch at different times. It's not necessarily related to you. There could be other reasons. If it happens again, maybe you could pre-arrange to have lunch with someone. Maybe you can take a good book to read or a podcast to listen to instead. Or maybe you can just enjoy the peace and quiet. And what support might be helpful right now? Well, I'm going to arrange an evening out with my best friend. I'm going to see if anyone is free for lunch at some point over the next week. And I'm going to give my shoulders a bit of a massage. And how am I feeling after showing myself some compassion? Calmer and more relaxed. My jaw isn't as clenched. I feel less agitated and restless, and there's a little warmth in my chest. I even feel a bit like smiling. So what do we do when we make a mistake? We use compassionate self-correction rather than self-criticism. So we can sometimes be reluctant to show ourselves compassion because we believe it will make us lazy or lower our standards if we aren't regularly acting like a drill sergeant, making sure we don't drop the ball or let ourselves and everyone else we love down. But this is really a false economy. Imagine someone you loved and cared for wanted to learn how to play tennis. They've been wanting to learn for a long time and they're really excited. They've asked you to help them find a coach so they can be the best tennis player they can. Would you suggest that they choose the tough, shouty, critical coach who believes you'll learn the most by having all your faults pointed out, never praising you and working you till you're on the floor with exhaustion? Or would you suggest they choose a coach who'll tell them what they're doing well, show them how they can improve in a respectful manner and encourage them to challenge themselves, but make sure they looked after themselves too? The chances are you would choose the second coach because you know that your friend would learn the most and make the most improvement with this coach. Support and challenge versus criticism and punishment. You get better results with support and challenge. Chances are, with the critical coach, they might not even go back for a second lesson. And for those with children, this choice might be even easier. The idea of developing child's learning best through criticism and punishment makes no sense. So why would we do it to ourselves and think that it works? So next time you need to make some changes and improvements, like we all do, be the nice coach to yourself. You'll get better results and feel good. Now on to compassionate behaviour. So you may remember we asked, what might help me feel safe so I can work through this, when we learned about compassionate thinking and reasoning. And here we're going to come up with some ideas. We're going to look to build a compassionate bag of ideas. When we're going on a plane, you get the talk at the start about how to use the oxygen masks. They explain that in case of an emergency, you should always put the mask on yourself first before anyone that you're caring for or responsible for. Initially, this makes no sense to us. The other person is our priority, so we want to look after them first before ourselves. However, this is a false economy again. If we put the oxygen mask on the other person first, we might not be in a position to care for them in the long term. We may have lost consciousness and then they're all alone. If we put the mask on ourselves first, we have the strength, energy and resources to care for the other person properly and fully. It's the same for us in life on the real ground. We need to take care of ourselves and show ourselves compassion first so that we can have the resources to care for everything else. Compassionate self-care is not selfish, it's essential. So, what behaviours and actions might go into our compassionate bag? Well, remember, what is self-care for one person may not be for others. These are just some examples to get you starting thinking about it. So it could be hugs and physical touch, pampering, trying out new things, sharing our feelings and our needs, walking in nature, exercise and movement, getting lost in music or a good book, and spending time with a loved one. If you're not sure of what you'd like to put in your bag of ideas, you could keep a log of what you already do to see what nourishes and nurtures you and what depletes and drains you. Make a list of all the things that nourish and nurture you, and fill up your energy and self-compassion bank on one side, and then make a list of all the things that deplete and drain you and empty your energy and self-compassion bank on the other. So here's a few examples. I won't read them all, but just a kind of a few from each side. So nourish and nurture might be just getting started on a task, doing some of the things we've done before, like soothing rhythm breathing and favourite place, might be walking the dog, might be baking, it might be having a bit of a tidy up, looking after your plants, might even be things like washing up, especially if you get to do it mindfully. Some of the things that might drain and deplete might be ironing, procrastinating, putting things off, just all of those text messages and emails, too much socializing, being stuck in traffic, technology. Just examples. Yours is going to look very individual. This isn't to say when we've done that list that we just stop doing the things that deplete and drain us, unfortunately. It's about A, making sure that overall there's a balance, and B, making sure that when we have a lot of depletion activities that we have to do and that come all at once, that we take extra care to make sure we plan in some nurture and nourishing activities too, so there is that balance. And we take extra care with all our other compassion tools on top of that. So finally, we're on to compassionate letter writing, which brings everything together nicely. So here's some instructions just to get you kind of started. So it might be nice to have some nice note paper or a pen to do this, but equally well, it can be on your phone or the computer, whatever suits you best. Start by getting yourself in a calm, compassionate frame of mind by doing some soothing rhythm breathing for a few minutes. Practice your compassionate body language, sitting openly with a gentle, warm smile, and let go of any judgments about doing this right or wrong. Just let the words flow. Remember, it's about your intention rather than getting the spelling or the grammar right. And you can decide if you want to write it in the first person using I or the third person using you, or it may just be a mix of it all put together. There's no right or wrong, it doesn't matter. So this is how it might look as a bit of a framework. So dear, put the name, you are feeling, or I am feeling, and we list the emotions. This is because, and then we describe the situation in facts rather than opinions. It's understandable that you, or understandable that I feel this way because, and then we validate our feelings and make sense of them from the old brain, new brain understanding. You should know that, or I want you to know that, and then we use words of care and compassion. I wonder if it could help too. And then we think of compassionate behaviours or actions that might activate your soothe system. I believe we're offering words of encouragement and support for the steps that you're going to take. And then yours, we sign it. And then you read it out loud or silently to yourself. And it can be helpful just to check out your letter has the right intention that you aimed for by asking yourself these following questions. So is your letter caring and encouraging? Is it sensitive to your suffering? Is it using words and a tone that help you tolerate your suffering? Is it using words and a tone that help you understand yourself better? Is it helping you to think of behaviours and actions that might soothe your suffering? And is it reminding you why it's important to soothe your suffering and take care of yourself? So we've got an example here of what one might look like. So, dear Stevie, you're feeling really lost, anxious and scared because your manager explained that there's going to be some redundancies and the whole team will have to reapply for their jobs. It's understandable you feel this way because it's scary wondering if you'll have a job and be able to support the family. You love the people you work with too and hadn't thought about leaving before. I know you struggle with interviews too, so this is extra scary. Your old brain is seeing danger and thinking the worst to try and protect you, but you can tolerate this and come through it. I know you can. I expect everyone else in your team is feeling something similar as well, so you're not alone. This is normal. I want you to know that you've done interviews before and been successful. I want you to know that you're a good worker. Remember the last appraisal? Any organisation would be lucky to have you because they really care about what you do and you're a good team player. I want you to know that you're stronger than you know and can get through this. I wonder if it could help to talk to your partner or best friend about how you're feeling. You deserve a hug after all this news, so maybe you could take the dog for a walk and have a play with them. This always cheers you up. It might also be helpful to see this as an opportunity to explore other careers or jobs if you want to, but maybe you're not ready to think about this just yet. For now, be kind and understanding to yourself. Give yourself time to process this news. I believe you can cope with this and you'll be okay. I believe you will make the most of this unexpected situation. Yours, Stevie. So in a nutshell, we all have tricky but amazing brains. They keep us safe, they nurture, and they allow us to be creative. We love all aspects of our brains, but we know that they can have a tendency to not work in harmony. This causes us distress and suffering, which is hard to cope with. We know in life that distress and suffering are inevitable and unavoidable. However, we don't have to prolong this suffering with our self-criticism and judgments. By learning to strengthen our soothe system, we can build self-compassion, which has huge benefits for us, our families, our friends, and the world we live in. We can start to practice self-compassion through soothing rhythm breathing, mindful attention, body language and tone of voice, imagery, compassionate thinking and reasoning, compassionate behaviour, and compassionate letter writing. To help you remind you and keep track of your self-compassion practice, you might like to keep a log a bit like this one. You can either just tick the log when you've done a practice, or you might like to write a comment about how you found it, and use this to support your practice rather than judge how often you're practicing. You know what we're like. And remember, this was a quick guide to understanding self-compassion and how to develop it in our lives. We've condensed, like I said before, what would normally be a course over many weeks into a short presentation. But if you'd like to work further on this, there are a few options. So you could buy or borrow from the library either of these two books written by Paul Gilbert, who developed this approach, or by Chris Irons and Dr. Elaine Beaumont, who are also leading writers in this field. And in addition to these, there are also other reputable authors on the topic of self-compassion too, such as Mary Welford, Deborah Lee, Russell Colts and Kristen Neff. And if you go to this website, overcoming.co.uk, you'll find lots of really interesting books and resources on there, but you'll also be able to download some worksheets that complement the work that we've done today as well. Or you can make your own up or just use a notepad and paper. So just a few slides around further support. So Wellbeing Suffolk and Norfolk has lots of good workshops. This is an example of one of them, hopefully, but there are lots of other free one-off workshops on our website that you can access as well. So full of evidence-based strategies and techniques, ideal early intervention for anyone awaiting treatment, easy to access and available to book immediately, presented by wellbeing experts, no assessment needed, no commitment, and obviously a wide range of topics. So go to our website and have a look. We also offer a range of interventions offered by telephone or video call. So guided self-help, this is very much a doing therapy, and CBT and counselling, which is a doing therapy and a talking therapy. And we have peer support. So peer support, someone with lived experience of mental health conditions and a personal recovery. Someone who has the ability to share their recovery journey with others and promote hope. Someone who's employed specifically as a result of their lived experience, and someone who can motivate and encourage others. So our peer mentors work alongside us in the service and offer a really valuable service to everyone who has contact with them. And we have wellbeing, social and community events. So our free social events are hosted in person or securely on Zoom. You can find out more information on our website. We have a huge selection of social events with new ones being added all the time, and everyone is welcome. For more information, email socials@wellbeing.n&w.co.uk. For Norfolk and Suffolk.community team at nsft.nhs.uk for Suffolk socials and events, or visit wellbeingNNS.co.uk to access Norfolk and Suffolk social events. So we've got the QR codes here if you want to use those as well. Understanding mental health and supporting others. If you'd like to continue to increase your understanding of mental health issues and work towards creating a supportive working environment, Wellbeing Community Champion training can help. You'll learn about mental health, why people may struggle, and signs you may notice when someone's having a hard time. You'll also learn how you might approach someone and start a conversation, as well as all about the Wellbeing Service and how you can offer support so you can effectively signpost. And in return, you'll get to be part of a group of like-minded people. So we've got the Norfolk QR code here and the Suffolk QR code here. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much. I hope listening today has been useful and you get the opportunity to practice some of these skills. I wish you the very, very best. Take care.